And I think as a young coach, like I have people come and watch me coach now, and people hit a bad shot, and I if I do get nervous about the outcome, I try not to show it and just let the thing play out. Whereas years ago, I'd be like, oh shit, what happened? What do I need to fix? And now you're layering. You have a stressful situation. You're layering more information on. They haven't really grasped what you did, what you wanted the first time. The hardest thing to do once you've diagnosed it, once you've come up with some kind of solution, ask them to do it, talk through it. The hardest thing in the world to do is shut up. You got to kind of let that system run a little bit. And a number of situations I've had recently where I've had recreational golfers taking a lesson, and tour players tend to come early, stay late. They don't have other jobs usually, hopefully not. And so you have a recreational player and a tour player, 15 feet apart, both working a problem. It's amazing to me how fewer balls a tour player will hit versus a recreational player, and how you can literally see the wheels turning with a tour player hitting shots, hitting multiple shots, and then coming up, asking a question, and then going back. Whereas a recreational player is, they don't have the same level of understanding. They haven't hit great shots, so their anxiety level is probably higher. They're wanting constant affirmation or clarity, and so they're not letting the system kind of sort it out enough. So no matter what we get to from an AI perspective, there's still going to be a human intervention as to how to get someone to do it. So it's going to be interesting times, and the AI has to learn off a good system. Like if it learns off just anything, it's not going to come up with a very good answer. Like Butch's AI learning versus an assistant. If you could capture that, that would be great.
I have a young student, to your point about the difference between an amateur and a tour pro is he called me after we worked on his putting last week, and he's been putting great, thankfully. But he called me and said, this was last Friday. He called me and said, I got a qualifier Monday, but I just played between qualifying and the tournaments. I just played 6 rounds in a row. But my chipping is not this or that. I said, okay, is your ball striking? Yeah, it was there, but the final round, it kind of started petering out. That's when he told me it was his 6th day of playing in this, with this heat wave rolling through. And I said, okay, don't touch a club the next 2 or 3 days. Well, I have a qualifier Monday. I said, let me explain it to you this way. Is your problem ball striking or putting or chipping? No. What's your problem? Well, I'm tired. So why would you want to hit balls more in 95-degree heat? So let's work on the cure for what the problem is, instead of just going right to the default of every golfer on the planet. Even the tour pros, we see Bryson and Victor Hovland. Now that's a little different. Those are big tournaments, but they're out there whacking on drivers.
Yeah.
And after the 3rd round of a giant tournament where they probably practice a lot going in, and that's a little different story. Tour pros are different animals, but it's interesting. The default of most golfers is, I got to go hit balls. I got to go hit balls.
Yeah, it's definitely, dig it out of the dirt is no longer really talked about. And being with players at major tournaments, I'm always impressed with how the good ones, if they're in a reasonably good place, are very, very good at managing energy levels. They know it's a long week. Being in the heat is a big deal. Getting their body moving correctly is a big deal. So we're much smarter. I would say the sports science is much more prevalent in preparation now, where it used to be, the best player in the world, which was Hogan at the time, hit balls and said, you got to dig it out of the dirt. Guess what every other player is going to do? They're going to hit balls and dig it out of the dirt until somebody came along and did it better. So I don't know this and can't quantify it, but if Hogan had the tools we have now, highly, highly unlikely he would have done what he did. Highly, unless he just didn't like being home or something, he would be, maybe that was it. But there's just better ways to do it, and we know so much more. And there has to be, like, I love motor racing. I love I don't do it anymore, but flying planes, like you fly the plane, you do a debrief. I try and get players much more into that mindset of do the task. Let's talk about the task. Let's reevaluate and let's see what's going on. And then how can we speed up that learning system and put it under stress?
I still say, and I had to go through this when I had illness and injury and everything else, that I didn't touch a club for almost 3 years. And what the by the third year, I was at least, I had so much cabin fever, for the people who live up north, we'll call it. That commercials or something, watching TV, I have like a kid size club that I would use to demonstrate easy. I would just move that slow motion as I wanted to start moving again. And as I progressed with that, I knew my own checkpoints in my swing, so I could look and do it slowly into my here, and here. The course of about 6 months of doing that, when I did come back to play, I was very, very surprised at how fast my swing fell back into place just from doing, I call them ghost swings, because you're not hitting a ball, you're just moving. And I try to get more students to understand that, of all skill levels, to say, if you want to shorten your learning curve at least as much for hitting balls out in the heat this time of year, if you want to get more bang for your buck, practice some of these things in your house so you can do them with less stress. You're not worried about where the ball's going. You're not hotter than hell. You're not feel like you're going to fall out. And you can at least develop some of these basic patterns that we're trying to establish. And then when you go out and you hit a couple and you start, then you can feel, oh, that's a different ball position. That feels better. Now I can see it. Now you can marriage the two together. I think your advancement will happen much more quickly. I don't know if you've seen that as well, but I've seen that quite a bit recently.
What I would say, from as you were saying that, I was thinking through, like, awareness in space. If you could give that to a player, again, concepts are fairly easy to figure out. But if you telling somebody something, have no awareness in space of where they are, then they're going to struggle. So I'd break it down to kind of get their awareness in space better. Like, I will literally push them on the practice tee. Like, I am trying to make them solve the problem. If they're moving in towards the ball too much, I'll push them in towards the ball more. So I want them to be aware of where they're going and how they need to offset those issues. So golf swing's a very complex movement. So if you can make somebody move in space in a pretty small area at speed, then whether the technique is, quote unquote, correct or not, they're going to stand a pretty good chance. So all these athletes coming from other sports is a great benefit, because they're bringing those movement patterns, that awareness, to our sport, which is great.
The one thing,
as a young lady, I started coaching. I rarely teach beginners. Sorry to jump in. I rarely teach beginners, but there's a young lady I coach now, and she's type A plus. She's a lawyer, and she's great, and she's Chinese descent, and so disciplined, and she's a dancer, and it's been fairly, like, she's not great with club face awareness, because there's no way to really simulate that. She's got better, but she's carrying a driver 170 yards sometimes, but she's petite, strong, but she's a dancer. So I was like, okay, then I'm going to tell you things like putting the dance together, and then we'll crank the music up, if you will, and you'll go faster. But she has great awareness in space. She has lower body strength. She has enough wrist strength. It's great. But I could tell her things perfectly. She didn't have those things. She couldn't hit it. So we need to do more of that kind of training, I think. And that, if you're a pro at a club and you're doing 1 hour lessons, I'd get him out there and do some basic movement stuff, like 2 or 3 times a week. It's a movement class. We don't need a ball. We don't need to fail. Let's do some things that get a movement going better, and it'll be fun. It'll be a group. You can laugh at each other, and you're gonna get him moving and get him playing better by doing that kind of stuff. There's not enough of that. Whereas a lot of golfers think it's intellectual. As I tell you, it's not a written test. You actually got to do this.
Do you? What I see is, and I'm curious I'm fairly certain that most coaches out there, instructors, see the same thing, that a lot of students will come to you and they're very anxious to get back to the comfort of where they were, as opposed to accepting that they're in a place that they need to modify something. And there is a little bit of a learning curve, or it might take a little longer than just a couple days until they're comfortable again. And that they will, and their attitude will reflect that, where they will get very irritated if they start to hit it a little better and they're starting to get it, and then it just slips a little bit and they hit a couple crooked. If they cycle that once or twice, that their attitude gets really down very quickly. So trying to get them to understand that, and maybe it's just what brings people to golf. That you get that passion and that bug, and then you want that feeling. It's like a dopamine hit.
For sure.
How do you how have you learned to deal with that, or coach, walk people through that?
I try and make it as there are a couple of different scenarios. So I try and make it as comfortable as possible by telling people if they're not very good, there's nothing you can do I haven't seen before. So like not in an egotistical way, just don't try and impress me. Like I've stood there with some of the best in the world. So, you're not going to do that. So let's just not be tough on ourselves. And I'm asking you to do things you can't do by yourselves.